We now come to examine item 10, report of the evaluation body on its work in 2019, which will retain our attention for some time. Before starting, I invite the chairperson of the evaluation body, Mrs. Sang-Mi Bak, representing the Korea Cultural Heritage Foundation, its vice chairperson, Mr. Elvin Falk, representing the Norwegian Crafts Institute, and its rapporteur, Mr. Martín Andrade Pérez, representing the Erigae Foundation, to join us at the podium. I wish to remind you that the committee established the evaluation body at its 13th session last year in Port Louis, Republic of Mauritius, in order to evaluate the nominations to the list of intangible cultural heritage in need of urgent safeguarding, the nominations to the representative list of the intangible cultural heritage of humanity, the proposals to the Register of Good Safeguarding Practices, and the requests for international assistance greater than $100,000 US. Let me explain how we will deal with items of the agenda concerning the report of evaluation body that also includes 4 sub-items. We will begin with item 10, the overall report of the evaluation body on its work, as follows. Mr. Andrade Pérez, the rapporteur, will present an oral report on a number of cross-cutting and specific issues raised during the body's work on 4 mechanisms, namely the urgent safeguarding list, the representative list, the Register of Good Safeguarding Practices, and international assistance. Following the oral report, I will open the floor for specific questions that committee members may wish to address to the evaluation body. I will ask you at that stage to restrict your interventions to questions to the evaluation body concerning issues addressed in its report. Our general debate on this item will take place after we have evaluated all individual files, at which point we will move to the adoption of the overall decision 14-10. Do you have any comments or questions on the order of the examination of these items and the debate? I see none, then I'll give the floor to... I see none. Okay. If you have no question on the order of the examination of the item, let me mention that the committee is asked to examine 5 nominations to urgent safeguarding list, including 1 nomination to the urgent safeguarding list, combined with an international assistance request, item 10A. 40 nominations to the representative list, item 10B, 3 proposals to the Register of Good Safeguarding Practices, items 10C, and 1 request for international assistance greater than $100,000 US, item 10D. All nominations, proposals, and requests will be the subject of a brief presentation by the chairperson of the evaluation body, who will give us a succinct explanation justifying the recommendation of the body, along with the display of photographic materials on screen. Concerning the debate of the committee on the files, I wish to underline that a heavy task is ahead of us, with 49 files to be examined over the course of 3 days of the work of the committee. May I also remind you that this year we have the provisional upstream dialogue process to consider, which is a new experience for the committee. Due to the demanding task and tight schedule, and in order to allow sufficient time for the committee to discuss specific files, the Bureau agreed during its meeting on 3rd October to adopt the same procedure as in previous years and to invite committee members wishing to discuss or amend specific draft decisions on nominations to the list, proposals for the register of good safeguarding practices, or the request for international assistance to inform the Secretariat by today, 9 a.m. In this regard, a message was sent by the Secretariat to all committee members on 23 November to inform them on this working method. This is merely a matter of organization, so that any changes on the timetable may be discussed at the Bureau meeting, and the Bureau may establish the list of files for debate before the agenda items begins. I wish to reassure members of the committee that this procedure does not prevent any committee member from taking the floor on any decisions if it wishes so. The Secretary informed me that it received requests for debate by committee members concerning one nomination to the representative list. One nomination for the urgent safeguarding list and for the representative list. Allow me to explain the working method I wish to apply for the adoption of draft decisions. In principle, for draft decisions for which we have not received any amendments or requests for debate, we will adopt them as a whole. With regards to draft decisions for which amendments were submitted, however, we will adopt them paragraph by paragraph. In addition, I would also like to suggest adopting the draft decisions of nominations that were concerned by the dialogue process, paragraph by paragraph, whether these files receive amendments or not. As you are aware, a process of provisional upstreams dialogue was introduced in this cycle for the first time and on an experimental basis. 6 files were concerned by this dialogue process, and the draft decisions for these files proposed 2 options of referral and inscription in order to facilitate the decision-making process of the committee. More detailed information on the dialogue process applied in the 2019 cycle will be presented by the rapporteur during his presentation of the body's report. Nonetheless, in all cases, the submitting state will have 2 minutes after adoption to deliver a statement, show a video clip, or to give a performance as customary. I hope that we can, in this way, save time and conduct our discussion in an optimal manner. Another aspect that I want to clarify is how I intend to proceed with amendments to the draft decisions on nominations, in particular in light of the committee's decision 11.8 regarding the clarification on the decision-making process concerning inscription, selection, or approval of nominations, proposals, and requests. Our decision-making process has also been the subject of discussions during the numerous meetings of the informal ad hoc working group since its creation in 2016. Taking into account the outcomes of these previous meetings and ongoing discussions, I would like to apply the following working method as a way forward for the present examination of nominations, proposals, and requests under item 10. In accordance with paragraph 14 of the Rules of Procedure of the Committee, my duty as chairperson is the smooth conduct of the proceedings and the maintenance of order. This will constitute my main line of action during our debates. As is reflected in the session 11.8 adopted in 2016, I will ensure that the spirit of consensus and international cooperation prevails throughout the debates and decision-making process of the committee. It is also important to remind ourselves that the draft decision proposed to us have been prepared by the evaluation body, a consultative body created to assist us in an in-depth examination of the nominations. We elect its members in light of their expertise. Therefore, our debates and our decision-making process should demonstrate respect towards the expertise and diligent work of the evaluation body. When amendments are put forward, and once again in conformity with the Decision 11-8, I will seek to establish consensus through appreciating but supporting arguments and objections to those amendments under consideration. To this end, when an amendment is proposed, I will first determine whether it receives an active relative support from the committee. In the case of an objection by a committee member to this amendment, I will then seek the active broad support from the majority of committee members. I reiterate, the smooth conduct of our debates is of prime importance to me. Allow me to emphasize that our decision-making process has an impact on the credibility of not only the work of this committee, but also, as I mentioned previously, of the convention as a whole. It is therefore our duty and our responsibility as members of the committee to keep these considerations in mind throughout our debates. Now, do you have any comments or questions on the procedure proposed? Azerbaijan, please. Kazakhstan, excuse me.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for very clearly explaining the procedures, and we do appreciate the hard work being conducted by the evaluation body. We regret that we were unable to inform the Secretariat earlier of introducing of our proposition to introduce an amendment to a file within 10A, item 10A. Therefore, nevertheless, we would like to seek permission from you, Honorable Madam Chair, and the committee to initiate discussion on the file 10A5, namely the spring right of Yuraysky Karahot, proposed by delegation of Belarus. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm taking note of what you have just said, Kazakhstan. Anyone else? If not, dear colleagues, I wish now to recall several other important points about the procedure of our debates under this item, which are the rules and working methods of the committee that I kindly ask you to respect. During the general debates under item 10, priority is given to members of the committee, but I will also give the floor to states parties, non-members of the committee, and other observers, if time allows. Under the examination of specific nominations to the list, proposal to the register and requests for international assistance, participation in the debates is limited to committee members. In other words, submitting states not member of the committee shall not take the floor when the committee examines individual nominations. The exception to this rule is given under Rule 22.4 of the Rules of Procedure of the Committee. Submitting states may take the floor to reply to specific questions and to provide information in reply to questions raised by committee members, if any. At the same time, please note that the same rule specifies that submitting states, whether a member of the committee or not, shall not speak to advocate their own nominations. I remind members and observers that there are a large number of people following our work back home through live webcasts or through the news media, and it is therefore important for us to keep as closely as possible to our schedule. At this stage, do you have any questions on this procedure? I see none. I would now like to give the floor to the rapporteur of the evaluation body for the 2019 cycle, Mr. Andrade. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ms. Chair. Ms. Chairman, members of the committee, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, I am pleased to introduce to you the report of the evaluation body on its work in 2019. These documents are the result of an assessment of the files of this cycle and of the reflections of the evaluation body, a group of 12 members that represents all 6 regions. It is composed of 6 individual experts who represent the states parties non-members of the committee. Those are Mr. Pierluigi Petrillo from Italy, Ms. Luisa Wolanska from Slovakia, Ms. Sonia Montesino Aguirre from Chile, Ms. Hien Tien Nguyen from Vietnam, Mr. John Mugi Omari from Kenya, and Mr. Said Al-Busaidi from Oman. Another 6 persons represented accredited non-governmental organizations: the Norwegian Crafts Institute, the Czech Ethnological Society, the Korea Cultural Heritage Foundation, the Association pour la Sauvegarde des Masques from Burkina Faso, the Egyptian Society for Folk Traditions, and the Erigalle Foundation from Colombia that I represent. The 12 members of the evaluation body met 3 times? No. Met 3 times? No.
Micro.
The 12 members of the evaluation body met 3 times in March, June, and September. When we met for the first time in March this year, we elected Ms. Sang-mi Bak from the Korea Cultural Heritage Foundation as chair, Mr. Eivind Folk from the Norwegian Crafts Institute as vice chair, and my colleagues elected me as rapporteur. It is my privilege, therefore, to present this report on behalf of all the 12 members of the body. From March to June, each member studied every file. During our second meeting, we discussed them and reached a consensus on each one of them after long discussions with, in many cases, a diversity of opinions. Between June and September, the preliminary reports were drafted, and during our third and last meeting in September, we discussed and drafted all the final reports, which were translated to French before November 8, when they were all uploaded to the UNESCO website. Additionally, during this cycle, on an exceptional basis, the evaluation body wrote the questions and evaluated the answer of the 6 nomination files that were concerned by the provisional upstream dialogue between June and September, as we will see later on this presentation. The work of the evaluation body consists of 6 documents. The first of them that I am going to present now is the report of the evaluation body on its work in 2019. It includes an overview of the cycle, the working methods of the body, a number of general comments about the nominations, the thematic issues the body identified after this assessment, some specific issues regarding the lists, and a draft decision for the committee's consideration. Other 4 documents regard the examinations of the nominations for each one of the mechanisms of the convention. The 6th document is the opinion of the evaluation body on nominations for the 2019 cycle concerned by the provisional upstream dialogue process. These last 5 documents will be presented to you by the chairman of the evaluation body, Ms. Sangmi Bak. As has been said, in this cycle, 52 files have been evaluated and are submitted to the committee for its decision. 5 multinational nominations and they include 5 multinational nominations and 5 files that were referred in previous cycles and have been resubmitted in these cycles. Of these 52 files, there are 42 nominations for the representative list, 4 nominations for the urgent safeguarding list, 2 files were presented for the urgent safeguarding list combined with international assistance, 3 for the register of good safeguarding practices, and 1 for international assistance. As you can see, the representative list is still the most used mechanism. Out of the 52 files, 32 files are recommended for inscription, selection, or approval, 12 are recommended for referral, 3 files are not recommended for inscription, selection, or approval, and 6 are concerned by the provisional upstream dialogue. The first important remark about the working methods of the evaluation body is that the evaluation only refers to the information included on the nomination files and their conformity with the required criteria. That means that the evaluations are not an assessment of the value of the element or the quality of the project. However, the body observed that information external to the nomination could have allowed for a more informed assessment of the nomination. It is also important to say that members of the evaluation body did not evaluate and did not take part in the discussions of the files submitted by their country of nationality or the country in which the NGO they represent is located. On its work, the body paid attention to the consistency of the file as a whole, treat all the files equally, ensuring consistency between them and between the recommendations, but also with evaluations of previous cycles. In this cycle, despite the changes made to the nomination form, the body remained consistent with the recommendation from previous years and did not recommend that files be referred based on criterion 2 only or on the periodicity of updating of the inventories. The evaluation body wants to emphasize the importance of the referral option as a tool for improving the quality of the files. It is not a negative evaluation of the file. It is applied when the information was considered to be not sufficient or missing, and it is a very good opportunity to improve the quality of a file that, as we have said before, is the presentation of the element to the whole world. For this cycle, 5 files that the body recommended for referral or not to inscribe in previous cycles were resubmitted. In some cases, there was a good improvement of the file, following and applying the recommendations of the committee with enough time. In other cases, the files only included few changes and did not take into account the recommendations of the committee. Some of these states resubmitted the files in the cycle immediately following their examination by the committee, which only gave them 3 months. The evaluation body recommends that states parties assess the recommendations carefully, allowing enough time to apply them, and that they try to avoid resubmitting the file in the immediately subsequent cycle without significant revisions. As a particular comment that we would like to point out during this cycle, the evaluation body assessed 2 files that used the combined mechanism for a nomination for inscription on the urgent safeguarding list and a request for international assistance. Both were recommended for referral, and there was a long discussion about this mechanism among the members of the body. The combined mechanism requires considerable effort for states parties, and the form ICH 01 bis is complex and not easy to fill in nor to evaluate. The mechanism did not seem as effective as expected in terms of results. The body therefore agreed that further reflection and review should be undertaken on the adequacy, pertinence, and effectiveness of the combined mechanism before continuing to use it in future cycles. As you know, the provisional upstream dialogue was another of the important challenges during this cycle for the body. It was introduced this year in the context of the global reflection on the listing mechanisms and as a way to improve the nomination process on an experimental basis. I would like to explain you how it worked this year. During its second meeting, the evaluation body agreed on which files might benefit from the dialogue process and draft specific questions addressed to the states parties concerned. Not all the files recommended for referral were included in this process. It was applied for files containing minor issues or a confusing statement that could be clarified through a simple question and answer exchange. It is very important to say that the process was not used with a view to the nomination file being rewritten. So after the meeting, the Secretariat sent the questions to the states parties and gave them 1 month to provide a concrete 200-word answer in both English and French. 2 months before the third meeting, the Secretariat made the responses available to the members of the evaluation body who formed their individual opinions. We discussed them during our September meeting and we reached collective opinions on the relevant criteria for these nominations. The dialogue process was applied in 6 cases. The questions were related to the safeguarding plan or to the safeguarding measures and to community participation and consent in the nomination process. For all the cases, the body reached a positive opinion. It was a positive experience for us. The evaluation body felt that no files are recommended to be referred or not inscribed due to minor aspects during this cycle. When the body recommended to refer or not to inscribe an element or a project during this cycle without a dialogue, it was because the file contained substantial issues that could not be solved through a simple clarification in a short time and without a consultation process with the communities. An issue concerning the dialogue process is related to the additional amount of work for the members of the body. In many cases, the body had to re-examine the whole file, so it is important to clarify that this process should only be applied in particular cases and not for all the files due to the amount of work. It would be unaffordable for the body to reopen all the files of a cycle. The body also noted that in many cases the answers seem to have been provided by government authorities or researchers, with less participation of the communities. In other cases, the answers were not as concrete as the body was expecting, but after our own evaluation, we found that some questions were not specific enough. So that helped the evaluation body to reflect about this process and give some recommendations to improve it in the future. The final recommendation of the evaluation body about the upstream dialogue is to continue with it. In this regard, some amendments to the operational directives could be proposed in order to allow the body to change its recommendation for only for the files concerned by the dialogue process during the September meeting. As in previous cycles, many nominations presented linguistic problems, including unclear and imprecise language, poor translations, typographical errors, and grammatical mistakes. It is important to recall that the quality of writing of nomination files or of their translation is important to ensure the element is well understood. The files available on the website of the convention are an important tool for promoting and presenting elements of intangible cultural heritage. So it is important that their quality is as high as possible. States parties are also reminded to avoid the use of language that refers to uniqueness, exceptionality, and immutability of elements. Expressions such as unique and prestige were used in some files, implying some hierarchy, as well as terms that describe the integrity or authenticity of an element, which is contrary to the principles and the spirit of the convention. Another issue during the discussions of the evaluation body concerned the titles of the elements. Some of them are very general and suggested a common and widespread element that could exist anywhere. Other titles use generic terms or are very long and descriptive, and in some cases there is a mismatch between the title and the content of the nomination file. It is important to remind that titles are the first presentation of an element, so they must be carefully formulated and give a clear idea of its nature. Furthermore, the evaluation body wants to recall to avoid references to exclusiveness, ownership, or geographic origin in the title of the elements. 5 multinational files were evaluated in this cycle. While the evaluation body recognized the complexity of the preparation of these files and commends the states parties for such a difficult task, it applied the same parameter as for nominations from a single submitting state. The body also discussed the pertinence of the inscription of files for some states and not for others, when a criterion is satisfied for certain states but not for others. It is also important to remind that multinational nominations must be prepared collaboratively, showing interaction and sharing of information and with an equal share of information from each country. This collaboration must be not only between the states parties, but between the communities concerned, and the safeguarding measure should include joint measures to safeguard the element as a shared element that can create ties between countries and especially between communities. To finish with this item, as in previous cycles, the evaluation body notes the interest of other states in joining these multinational nominations and invites the states to work towards the possibility of extended nominations. Finally, the evaluation body is pleased to recommend some nominations from this cycle as good examples. 1 request for international assistance, 2 nominations for the Register of Good Safeguarding Practices, and 3 for the representative list. Other 7 nominations for the representative list have been commended for specific aspects. The evaluation body discussed several thematic issues. I will mention them briefly. As in previous years, the evaluation body assessed similar elements nominated for possible inscription by different countries, as well as elements similar to ones inscribed in the past by other states parties. The body wishes to reiterate that the inscription of an element on the list does not imply exclusivity or ownership. It doesn't mean neither that other states cannot nominate similar elements practiced on their territory, and it does not represent a means either to reinforce geographic origin or the geographic indication of an element or to exclude other states. The evaluation body wishes to reiterate this invitation to consider working towards the possibility of extended nominations. This year, for example, 2 different nominations were submitted for similar elements. While one is recommended for inscription and the other is not, this difference in recommendations is not intended to reflect a judgment on the elements themselves, but rather reflects the difference in the quality of the file submitted. Also, as in the other cycles, many debates came about the definition of intangible cultural heritage. The lists themselves provide a definition of intangible cultural heritage, which is enlarged every year through new inscriptions. But it means that any listed element will contribute to this definition. The body recognized the open definition of intangible cultural heritage provided by the Convention, but it wishes to reiterate that this does not mean that any cultural element can be included on the lists. Several cases under this cycle provided an opportunity to discuss the complex relations between the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage and the promotion of cultural goods, services, and industries. While these 2 approaches are not necessarily mutually exclusive, an emphasis on the promotion of cultural goods, services, and industries rather than on the safeguarding of living heritage is not in line with the spirit of the Convention. As in previous cycles, this relation between intangible cultural heritage and economic development has been debated during the body meetings. In many cases, elements of intangible cultural heritage are directly linked to economic activities. This link is not the problem in itself, but many issues can arise as a result of it. First of all, the body found that in some cases, the safeguarding plans or safeguarding measures were primarily directed at preserving and reinforcing the economic aspect of an element. Other issues that many nomination files include measures to address the risk of over-commercialization, while others lacked them. The evaluation body wishes to reiterate the importance of this issue and invites all states to recognize it and include corresponding measures. In the case of crafts, some files describe the use and decorative functions of the product rather than the cultural meanings and social functions of the practice, knowledge and skills related to the element. And tourism. The management of tourism is one of the main challenges for elements of intangible cultural heritage. In many files, tourism was an important part of the safeguarding plan, while in others there were no measures directed at preventing the potential impact of excessive tourism. The evaluation body wishes to recall the importance of considering the risk of the potential decontextualization of an element as a result of tourism, as well as the need for its monitoring. The body was concerned because some files focus on the promotion of a place as a tourist destination, and others highlight the potential for increased visibility on tourism following the inscription of the element. The evaluation body welcomes safeguarding measures with the potential to raise awareness about the impact of tourism. Finally, the evaluation body wishes to recall that the inscription of an element on the representative list does not confer a special brand or label that have been mentioned in some cases. Another major issue has been the definition and nature of the communities, groups, and individuals concerned. In some cases, the files did not clearly specify whether the community was a group of persons living in a particular geographic area or the practitioners of the element. In other files, the community was associated with a specific private organization or a group of professionals related to an element. In these cases, the evaluation of the files proved problematic due to the ambiguous nature of the community concerned. The definition of the community should also include a detailed description of the gender dimension, with a clear identification of the roles of men and women, as well as letters of consent from practitioners of different genders. The evaluation body was concerned by the absence of letters of consent from female members in some files that described the broad participation of women and girls in the practice. The evaluation body recalls the importance of clearly defining the communities, groups, or individuals concerned with elements of intangible heritage. As in previous cycles, some nomination files describe the use of a top-down approach in the nomination process. Some cases correspond to national elements which are recognized by the entire population of a country as part of their intangible cultural heritage. In these cases, the states parties asserted that the entire population appreciates the element or participates in the process of its nomination, but without including any proof of this. In other cases, inadequate methodologies were used, such as surveys. There were also cases in which the community did not actively participate, but merely approved information presented to it by external researchers. The evaluation body invites states parties to avoid such approaches and to guarantee wider community participation from the beginning of the process, with members of the community being directly involved in the preparation of the nomination file. As in previous cycles, some nominations relate to traditional sports. The evaluation body reiterates the importance of the distinctions between traditional and professional sport. The body has followed the definition of a traditional sport as an expression of intangible cultural heritage when it is a community-based, has a clear cultural meaning, and is constantly transmitted across generations. The body also noted that several of the elements nominated for possible inscriptions were closely related to physical space. The body welcomes the focus on this connection, but reiterates the importance of keeping in mind that the inscription of an element on one of the lists does not mean that the related site is also inscribed on the list. Finally, some nomination files highlight the role of intangible cultural heritage in terms of environmental protection and sustainability. Even if the evaluation body welcomes such files, it is important that they propose a balance between the safeguarding of intangible cultural heritage and the protection of nature. In the 2019 cycle, the body identified a number of issues that made some nomination files contradictory or unclear. I am going to explain some of these. The first is the consistency of the whole file with the definition of the element. The body wants to recall that without a clear definition of the element, it is impossible to assess how its inscription could contribute to the purpose of the representative list, or it is not possible to assess the threats that it faces. Furthermore, if the element is not well defined, the body could question whether the communities gave their informed consent for the inscription of an element that was itself unclear. The definition also gives an idea of the bearer communities. This creates a link with criteria U4R4, where they are more clearly defined. In some cases, however, contradictory information is provided for different criteria. For instance, the communities that provide their consent should correspond to the description given in U4R4 and in the other section of the file. The safeguarding plan for elements nominated for possible inscription on the urgent safeguarding list should also be consistent with the threats defined under criterion U2. If this is not the case, the safeguarding plan will be considered to be insufficient. This is also the case when the threats listed are so general as to render it impossible to propose specific safeguarding measures. Finally, the fact that an element is included on a national inventory and is thus recognized as intangible cultural heritage at the national level does not necessarily mean that it can be considered as intangible cultural heritage as defined by the Convention. Some countries may have a broader definition of intangible cultural heritage and may therefore not meet the requirements under U1R1. For the urgent safeguarding list, the evaluation body wishes to highlight the importance of identifying threats to an element in a specific manner, except when it comes to threats that are beyond the control of the community. In these cases, the evaluation body recommends that measures be proposed to mitigate these threats without necessarily addressing them. As in previous cycles, there is evidently still a misunderstanding of criterion R2 despite the improvements made to the nomination 4. Many files continue to address the increased visibility of the element itself rather than the visibility of intangible cultural heritage in general. No. Therefore, hola, no. Yeah, therefore, good. Mejor. Therefore, no. Therefore, the evaluation body decided to take into account. Therefore, yes, okay. The evaluation body decided to take into account all the information provided in Section 2 of the form in order to assess whether the file fulfills this criterion in general, rather than focusing on whether the state party had properly responded to each sub-questions. Based on these issues, the evaluation body took the difficult decision not to refer files based on this criterion only. However, the body recommends that the committee engage in an overall review of this criterion in the context of the global reflection on the listing mechanisms. Finally, a very delicate issue was the importance of the inventories. Very few nomination files fully satisfied criteria U5R5 in the sense that it is not always clear how they contribute to safeguarding. The evaluation body invites the committee to undertake significant measures to underline the importance of inventories with a view to safeguarding and to determine the future approach to criteria U5R5 so as to guarantee the continued credibility of the list and the convention. I am going to finish with the participation of the communities, groups, and individuals. It's the final part of this presentation. As for the community consent, the form, number, and nature of this consent were recurrent concerns for the evaluation body. As in previous cycles, it was difficult to establish whether the number of letters of consent provided was sufficient. In certain cases, some of the communities that had signed the letters were not mentioned in the file, while in others, some of the communities described had not provided any form of consent. The evaluation body invites states parties to be consistent in this regard. In some cases, nomination files describe the process that include workshops and different activities in relation to community consent, but without any proof of such activities. Moreover, the use of standardized letters of consent is strongly discouraged. Many nomination files use this methodology, which does not always demonstrate the active participation of the community. The evaluation body also invites states parties to pay special attention to the consent and translation of the forms of consent. In some cases, the information presented in the letters did not correspond to the information provided in the file. Finally, the evaluation body welcomes different and innovative forms of consent, such as the use of videos or consultations via the radio to reach a wider community. Another recurrent issue related to representativeness of the people who participated in the process and signed the letters of consent. As already noted, the definition of the community concerned is sometimes unclear, and nomination files presented a diverse understanding of the concept of community, which is not precisely defined by the Convention. As it is difficult to assess the nature of the community concerned without knowledge of the context, the evaluation body recommended that the nomination file be referred only in the case of an evident top-down approach, a significant lack of coherence between the file and the letters of consent, or a clear lack of community participation. Finally, the evaluation body noted that some nomination files for the urgent safeguarding list suggested the use of a top-down approach, lacking clear links between the proposed plan and the communities concerned. Sometimes more importance was given to the promotion of an element than to its safeguarding by the communities concerned. The evaluation body encourages states parties to place the communities concerned at the center of the safeguarding plans, from the proposal of the plan to its implementation. These were the most critical points of the evaluation body report. For other issues, the document 14Com10 can be consulted. On behalf of the evaluation body, I would like to thank you for entrusting us with this task. And I also would like to thank my colleagues of the evaluation body for all their hard work, and of course to the Secretariat. To all of them, thank you for entrusting me with this task, and to the Arigalle Foundation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Andrade Perez, for your presentation. You raised important new issues. We should inform the debate of the committee. I now open the list of speakers for questions on the report of the evaluation body. Sí, Guatemala, adelante.
Gracias, señora presidenta. Agradecemos al órgano de evaluación por el informe presentado, así como por la ardua labor que realizaron a lo largo del año que cubre el ciclo 2019, en particular en la implementación del nuevo mecanismo de diálogo previo provisorio. El presente informe aclara algunas de las dudas que teníamos en relación a la implementación de este nuevo sistema de diálogo. Entendemos que dicho mecanismo permitirá elevar el número de expedientes recomendados para inscripción, lo que significa que de alguna manera este procedimiento experimental habrá contribuido a facilitar el proceso de inscripción para los estados proponentes que beneficiaron del mismo. Consideramos en ese sentido que la iniciativa constituye un paso importante en la mejora de los mecanismos de inscripción. Entendemos que todas las respuestas de los estados proponentes que beneficiaron del referido mecanismo fueron satisfactorias y que el órgano de evaluación recomienda su inscripción, aunque para mi delegación no queda claro que sea esa la recomendación, pues en el proyecto de decisión se presentan dos opciones, como si de cierta forma el órgano de evaluación no hubiese tomado una decisión sobre recomendar o no la inscripción. Coincidimos con el órgano de evaluación en el sentido que en algunos casos las preguntas no fueron lo suficientemente claras, lo que significó una dificultad para los estados proponentes dar respuestas precisas. Por otro lado, estimo importante recordar que el órgano de evaluación se basa únicamente para el examen de los expedientes en las informaciones con las que cuentan en los documentos presentados y no en el elemento en sí mismo, tal como nosotros mismos lo hemos establecido. Asimismo, concordamos en que la opción de regresar los expedientes para los estados proponentes que no cumplieron con los criterios según el órgano de evaluación constituye una oportunidad para mejorar los expedientes y que puedan ser inscritos posteriormente, aunque entendemos al mismo tiempo las expectativas de las comunidades concernidas. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Guatemala. Now the floor is for Azerbaijan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would like to commend the evaluation body for its work and congratulate for the report and the excellent presentation. We really appreciate what evaluation body is doing and the quality of the evaluation. We are congratulating them for that. In the report, they raised a number of very important issues and challenges, which I believe is really important and worthy of further reflections in the committee, like the issue of the consistency of the evaluation within and across files in the cycle, consistency with the previous decisions of the committee, and many other issues that were raised by the evaluation body. We also congratulate the evaluation body by introducing successfully the upstream process, and we are very glad to see that many countries benefited from this upstream process on a certain files during this cycle. However, we would like to learn a bit more on the ways in which the evaluation body choose to open the dialogue on particular cases. We have also noted that the dialogue process did take additional time for the evaluation body and consider that such question should remain limited as much as possible. In line with the discussions at the session of the committee last year, our delegation draws the attention to the fact that the dialogue process is not yet reflected in the operational directives, and we would take the upstream dialogue this year as an experimental process per se. My delegation noted that the file submitted by 2 states for the combined mechanism of nomination to the urgent safeguarding list and a request for the international assistance. We believe that this combined mechanism represents an excellent opportunity for states who seek funding for the safeguarding projects of ICH in need of urgent safeguarding and should therefore be supported and encouraged. Based on the report, however, the evaluation body has faced difficulties with the form ICH bis, 10 bis. In our view, steps need to be taken to improve and simplify the form to respond to the needs of submitting states. We would like to commend the states that have submitted multinational files for inscription this year. Our delegation believes, and we repeated this many times, that the multinational files are of utmost importance among all the listing mechanisms of 2003 Convention, as they directly demonstrate the spirit of international cooperation and reflects the objectives of this convention. My delegation also notes the situation with the distribution of files within the ceiling of 50 files this year, as applied by the Secretariat, and is concerned with the number of files, 38, that were submitted but could not be treated in 2018. And we were therefore, and these files were accommodated in 2019, thus leaving only 12 remaining spots for other priority files under the paragraph 34 of the operational directives. We believe that the committee needs to be mindful of all the developments in terms of the priorities for the examination of files set up by the General Assembly a few years ago. In this context, the growing number of submitted national files for the inscription on the representative list might lead to the situation where the nominations to the urgent safeguarding list and multinational files would be pushed beyond the ceiling of 50, and therefore not to be treated within the ceiling. Therefore, we asked the Secretariat to be vigilant of this situation and reflect on the possible ways in which the situation with the number of files and priorities could be harmonized in the future. Finally, Azerbaijan has noted the recurrent issue that the evaluation body is facing, including in this cycle, which was also reflected in the report. The committee needs to reflect on the ways in which the whole methodology of evaluation could be revised, as the evaluation body reflected in its report based its opinion exclusively on the information reflected in the nomination without any fact-checking outside the nominations. The evaluation body confirmed in its report that information external to the nomination files could have allowed for more informed assessment whether the file responds to the criteria concerned. Here, the important role belongs, in our view, to the Secretariat to be particularly attentive to the cases where the external information would indeed be very useful, especially when the nominations raise the issues linked to the territorial integrity of state parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Azerbaijan. Je vais maintenant donner la parole à l'Arménie.
Je vous remercie, Madame la Présidente. La délégation de l'Arménie remercie l'organe d'évaluation pour son rapport très détaillé et salue la qualité du travail accompli en 2019. Ce rapport soulève des questions récurrentes importantes. Et cette délégation se réjouit que pour certaines d'entre elles, des réponses concrètes ont pu leur être apportées. Il en est ainsi du nécessaire dialogue qui doit être noué avec l'État soumissionnaire. Le processus provisoire de dialogue qui a été expérimenté en 2018 par l'organe d'évaluation a été une expérience concluante qui devrait induire une amélioration du processus d'évaluation. Sur ce point, cette délégation suit la recommandation de l'organe suggérant d'amender les directions opérationnelles. Il en est de même de la question du critère R2, dont l'évaluation se révèle relativement difficile. Aussi, cette délégation partage la démarche préconisée d'engager un examen de ce critère dans le cadre de la réflexion globale sur les mécanismes des listes. L'organe d'évaluation fait également part de ses observations à propos de la commercialisation excessive de certains éléments, de la nécessité d'une large participation des communautés au processus de candidature, enfin, de l'élaboration des mesures de sauvegarde ou encore de la mise à jour des inventaires. Ce sont là, à l'évidence, des questions essentielles qui doivent être nécessairement prises en considération et méritent l'approfondissement de la réflexion. Je vous remercie.
Merci beaucoup, Arménie. I'll now give the floor to Netherlands.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would like to thank the evaluation body for their immense work, detailed report, and precise recommendations. The Netherlands would like to urge member states to take the report into account when preparing a nomination file, since many important observations are covered. The evaluation body is the consultative body for evaluating nominations and is established by the committee. The Netherlands values the expertise of the evaluation body and follows its recommendations as much as possible. In recent years, we've seen that in the nomination process, many countries found dialogue with the evaluation body was missing. And as a result, the committee strengthened the inscription process by introducing an upstream dialogue as an experiment. We've seen that the evaluation body has successfully applied this new upstream mechanism, but what does this mean for the committee and our discussions on these files? The Netherlands is of the opinion that one of the results of the new upstream process is that the recommendations of the evaluation body leaves less room to the committee to change draft decisions with a recommendation referral. We would like to share two remarks. We often found in the recommendations of the evaluation body that many files show top-down approaches and have less input by the communities themselves. This is very disappointing, and it's not in line with the purpose of the Convention, and we hope that nominating states take notice of the recommendation of the evaluation body on this point. Moreover, the body points to linguistic quality, a recurring item in every report of the evaluation body in recent years. This points to the fact that the concepts of the Convention are still not understood, misunderstood, or even not known to the ones who draft the file, and we hope that nominating states make use more often of the possibility of UNESCO facilitators to assist the drafting process of the file. Thank you.
Thank you, Netherlands. Now, Jamaica. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Jamaica, too, would like to congratulate the evaluation body for the work that it has done over the evaluation period and for the detailed report that it has presented. We appreciate the challenges faced by the evaluation body. It is not an enviable task, and we congratulate them for stepping forward and undertaking this very critical work in furthering the aims of the Convention. But at the same time, we need to appreciate the difficulties that some states parties who are putting forward nominations face in terms of interpreting some of the requirements. And I speak specifically of, in the case of inscriptions, the nominations to the representative list, the R2 and R3, which obviously have been problematic in this cycle of evaluations. And in the same vein, for those nominations to the list in need of urgent safeguarding, parallel U2 and U3, we find that the upstream dialogue process does provide a useful opportunity for clarification and the response to the issues raised by the evaluation body, and we encourage its use. I would not go as far as my colleague from the Netherlands in saying that it is a success. We're on the first leg of it, and there is always the possibility of fine-tuning this mechanism, but we do think that it is a very useful means for creating dialogue. And I will confine my comments to that for the time being. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Jamaica. Please, Japan.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. First of all, Japan would like to commend the efforts by evaluation body. And there has been a good progress after the last year's meeting of this committee. Particularly, we welcome the introduction of the upstream dialogue based upon the discussion we made last year. We pointed out that there are actually two concerns for us. And one is actually lack of sufficient dialogue between the evaluation body and the nominating party after the submission of the nomination file. And second is, for us, it seems to be that there's an excessive reliance upon the information contained in the nomination files. And this upstream dialogue has definitely improved the dialogue between the evaluation body and nominating parties. And I'd like to welcome the positive outcomes which has been produced by this process. But at the same time, we need to review and check if this has been done perfect. Of course, this is provisional, and you have selected 6 files for the upstream dialogue. And we'd like to know how did you choose those 6 files? Did you follow to the criteria of minor issues and confuse the statement? But still, those criteria are not clear enough for us. That's question number 1. Number 2, I mentioned that if it's good or not to rely on the information contained in the nomination file only. And I appreciate that you correctly mentioned the importance of the informed assessment. And is it good for you to rely upon only the information contained in the file to achieve the informed assessment? It seems to me that there's some contradiction in it. And also last year, I pointed out the issue of the inappropriate language, uniqueness, originality, authenticity. And there's an argument, at least based upon the existing operation guidelines. Yes, those languages are supposed to be against the concept of the convention. But we have already filed a concern and a question about the validity of such argument. And in my view, actually, some elements are supported by the community because it reflects the uniqueness of the community, or it is original in that community. And so I think this point should be seriously and sincerely addressed in the upcoming process of the review of the assessment process or evaluation process. And finally, I'd like to point out other issues, particularly relevant to this year's commission. Those are under the thematic issues, and including the exclusivity and also geographical origins. And to ensure the credibility of this program, maybe we need to discuss about those critical issues in the forthcoming process of the review of the program. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan. Austria? No? Yes. Austria, please. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well, our delegation congratulates the evaluation body for the consistency in its work, the detailed and insightful report, and its extraordinary efforts and dedication to the evaluation of nominations. As our colleagues, we also took note that the evaluation body welcomes the upstream dialogue mechanism, and we wish to congratulate the body for coming up with this creative kind of testing system that allows for the clarification of minor issues, although we agree with our colleagues that we need to give it further reflection and thoughts. As this is our last year as members of the committee, we'd just like to look back over the last 4 years, where we've seen a number of recurring issues, positive developments, as well as recurring challenges. On the one hand, we have seen more and more nominations that highlight the contribution of ICH to sustainable development. And we've also seen an increase in the numbers of multinational files. These nominations do not only testify to the important role of ICH to foster dialogue and cooperation, they also show that living heritage does not necessarily follow national boundaries. And based on our own positive experience, we encourage further nominations of elements of shared ICH. On the other hand, the concerns of the evaluation body are still concerning, amongst others, a lack of community participation, inappropriate language and ownership issues, over-commercialization of elements and over-tourism, as well as a small number of nominations for the Good Safeguarding Register. Considering that this is a convention for the safeguarding of the intangible cultural heritage, the collection of safeguarding practices that can be or that can serve others as a model is at the heart of our work. And speaking from our own experience, inscription on the register has had a number of immensely positive effects, such as an intensified dialogue and interregional exchange. So there also seems to be a recurrent issues with the representation of large, really large communities, and we've had a similar case in our last meeting in Mauritius. So I would like to ask the evaluation body to give a further explanation on criterion R4 and what is considered sufficient evidence of community consent in that case. Another question I would have concerns criterion 2. Did I understand correctly that we are going to continue to evaluate files without really considering this criterion until the end of the reflection process in 2022? So, yes, that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Austria. We have 10 more minutes of interpretation, so the floor is for Cyprus.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Tout d'abord, nous voulons féliciter l'énorme travail de l'organe d'évaluation et surtout pour la mise d'un travail du processus du dialogue. Par contre, nous avons aussi quelques questions à l'organe d'évaluation. Déjà, comment il a choisi les dossiers pour faire le dialogue? Sur quels critères il a choisi les... Parce qu'il a des dossiers qui avaient un seul critère et apparemment, vous n'avez pas eu de dialogue avec ces dossiers-là. Et pareil, pour les deux options que vous donnez, une négative et une positive, on voulait savoir, on ne voit pas votre opposition si elle est pour après le dialogue ou vous le laissez le comité de choisir. Je pense que c'était mieux si l'organe d'évaluation nous donnait son avis après le dialogue. Voilà, merci.
Merci, Cyprus. Now, Philippines.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson. We congratulate the evaluation body for their impressive work for this cycle. Their report brings to the fore current and emerging challenges in the evaluation of nominations. On the specific challenge of the abstract nature of the R2 criteria, how would the evaluation body think it most appropriate to adjust it so that it can be more comprehensible to those filling out the nomination forms? In our delegation's analysis this 4 years to the committee, we observed that often state parties include pertinent information relevant to particular criteria under different sections dispersed throughout the dossier. Paradoxically, perhaps it is the word limits which make it difficult for state parties to give coherent answers. Hence, it can become necessary to examine and interpret the files more broadly rather than just looking at the answers provided per subsection. We agree with the evaluation body's observation and recommendations regarding the urgent safeguarding list, which runs the risk of being overshadowed by the representative list. The urgent safeguarding list should really be the focus. We also appreciate the evaluation body's comments on the upstream dialogue process and look forward to discussing the proposed amendments to the operational directives, which would allow the evaluation body to finalize the report at their September session, taking into account answers provided by states parties whose files were subjected to the dialogue mechanism. We know that it is not a perfect system, but believe that over time it can further improve and be made more efficient. Lastly, on the important issues of commercialization and impacts of tourism, we think there should be more definitive guidance on these matters for all state parties to absorb. Certain terminologies and perspectives regularly crop up in the nomination files. In fact, we would like to recommend the development of an updated guidebook that can aid states parties and communities when dealing with these issues in the context of ICH and nominations. We hope that this will be reflected in the draft decision on item 10. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Philippines. Poland, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would like to join our previous speakers, and I would like to congratulate evaluation body and thank as well for their enormously important effort to facing with new dialogue mechanism. I think this is very important to underline this, that for the first time we could observe the effects, and I should say very positive effects of your work. Thank you very much indeed, especially when we opened new doors for, let's say, style of implementation of this convention, especially as we speak that since many other sessions or previous sessions, we've repeated more or less the same observations like you just presented, and especially concerning these points when there we speak about the involvement of the local communities or communities in the preparation of the application. And the awareness of the community in this case is crucial when we speak about the dissemination of the convention and understanding of the convention. And in this case, I would like to underline especially wording, and this right wording when we can see very clearly the understanding of the difference between this convention and other cultural conventions, UNESCO, especially in 1972 convention. So once more, thank you very much. And in this case, I would like to encourage you for further work with new attitude, but I would like to encourage state parties for, let's say, more concrete dialogue. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Poland. J'ai encore sur la liste Palestine, Colombie et la Turquie. Et nous allons, quand on va rentrer du déjeuner, je vais leur donner la parole parce que c'est déjà, on a déjà quelques minutes en retard. Mais avant de laisser avant qu'on parte pour le déjeuner, je vais donner la parole à M. Curtis qui a des renseignements qui sont pratiques, d'ordre pratique.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to remind once again, all of those who receive financial assistance for participation in this meeting to please go to the registration desk at the entrance. We still need your signature as proof of travel. There are also some interesting events taking place during our lunch break. The panel discussion, Safeguarding Indigenous Heritage and Languages Through Education Programs, which is organized by UNESCO in celebration of the 2019 International Year of Indigenous Languages, will also be held between 1:15 and 2:30 p.m. in room Enye O on the 3rd floor. We encourage you all to attend. The meeting of the ICH NGO Forum Working Group on Information and Communication Technologies is taking place in room HI on the 3rd floor between 1 and 2:30 p.m. And finally, please consult also the UNESCO website dedicated to the 14th session and also the TV screen just outside the room for more information about these events. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis. Let's meet again at 2:30 p.m. The room will remain open during lunchtime. Please don't leave any of your personal belongings. Thank you.